If you've been online recently, you've probably seen a meme or an ad for the movie Bird Box. Now I know I'm about a week or two late getting this out, but I've been really sick and I still sound a little nasally, at least I feel like I do. But anyway, I still feel like the movie is very popular right now, so it's still an appropriate time to make this video. Now, no official meaning has been released for Bird Box, but we can definitely say it does allude to something. And so in this video, I want to talk about problems that I find with metaphor-based movies. And by that I mean movies that the story of the movie itself isn't the main focus, but more so the metaphor that it is alluding to or that it's pointing at. Now, the difficulty with metaphor-based movies is making the facts and the events within the movie line up with the story itself and with the metaphor. So the more specific you are with your story and the more details you give, the more interesting it is for the readers. However, you also tend to create potential plot holes because a certain detail that maybe makes sense in the story and fits really, really well may not fit well with the metaphor and may not make sense with the metaphor. Or maybe a detail you give that makes sense with the metaphor doesn't make sense within your story. So you're really trying to line up a fact with two different stories. That's not to say it can't be done, it's just difficult. So I believe that's why the specifics are often left out. But leaving out the specifics leaves a lot of unanswered questions. And Bird Box has quite a few of those unanswered questions, so I'm going to go through those right now. First, the obvious one. What are the things they're seeing? What is this entity that they're seeing and it's driving them to suicide? Is it a demon? Is it magic? Is it just simply something snapped within their brain and they think they're seeing, maybe they have a disease within them and they think they're seeing something and it drives them to insanity? Who knows? It doesn't explain that. But a little bit deeper than just the obvious of what they are, but why are they killing? How are they killing them? I mean, obviously they're driving them to suicide, but how are they driving them to suicide? And why now? At this point, it seems in the movie it seems to be modern times. So why is that happening now? If it is maybe a demon or something driving people to suicide, why did he wait until now to do it? Another question left unanswered is why does it affect the insane differently? Now, the certain metaphors this could make sense, but within the story itself, it doesn't, simply because it's never explained. Now, I'm aware that this could be just a tool that the movie uses to add a more direct threat to the main characters, to the protagonist, because the entity that they're seeing that drives them to commit suicide, as long as they don't see it, they're fine. So I understand that as a book or a movie, because I believe this movie was based on a book, it might be that more direct threat that they have to deal with their blindfolds off or on, to add a little bit more action to it. And so as a book or a movie tool to add that more direct threat to the protagonist, I understand it. However, it probably should have been explained within the story, and I think it very easily could have been explained if they had simply left more specifics, or rather if they'd given us more specifics within the story. My other question is, what's the significance of the School of the Blind? Now, I understand that the idea is that, well, they're blind, so they can't see this entity, therefore they can't be driven to suicide. However, I don't really see the point of it within the story. I suppose it could be used to explain why the school or why these people survived the initial outbreak of this creature that was driving them to suicide, but so did lots of other people. So the school didn't really need to be there because you already had several other people survive the initial outbreak. My other question is, what's the significance of the school as a school? The protagonists are staying at this house and they're fairly safe, so what's the significance of this this building, this school? How's it any different? How's it any safer? Now, I'm aware that they said that they were running out of food and scavenging food, but I still don't understand why they didn't attempt to grow anything. They had made it to the grocery store. I'm sure there's some sort of seeds or something they could have used to start growing some of their own food, but they didn't. And I don't think, I don't know how easy it'd be to garden with a blindfold on, but it probably would be easier than looting houses with a blindfold on. So that was something I never really understood, is why was it so much safer or better to go to this school? Now, because I feel that the school really wasn't that much of a better option than the house they were staying at, maybe a little bit because there were more people and I suppose they had a way to grow food and everything, but I don't feel like overall as far as safety it was that much safer. So really the school was just a MacGuffin. It was just an item that the protagonist cared about that the watcher, or if you read the book, the reader, didn't care about at all. So it was just a MacGuffin or an item used to get the story in motion, to keep it in motion instead of them just sitting in his house. Now, it was a very minimalized MacGuffin. It wasn't used a whole lot. It was used at the end, and I think the School of the Blind holds a much larger significance in the metaphor that it's alluding to, not the story itself. And this is the problem we run into a lot throughout the story. The insane people. I think within the metaphor they probably hold a huge meaning, but within the story they're not explained at all, and they're really just kind of glanced over. They're insane, so it doesn't affect them the same. And I think once or twice the protagonist asks why, but they never get an answer, and they never really try to get an answer. The School of the Blind holds, I think, a large significance within the metaphor. I would assume it does, because the story put a big significance on it, but it didn't actually, or rather, not the story, the movie placed a big significance on it, but it didn't hold a huge significance within the story. Simply just a place where, a different place to do exactly what they were doing before, which was at the house on the river. But again, within the story, it didn't hold a huge spot or huge significance just within the movie and within the metaphor. The final unanswered question I have is, why didn't the insane people attack the school? I mean, we saw constantly that they were driving around town looking for people with their blindfolds on, trying to get them to take the blindfold off and see the truth or whatever. But I don't understand why they didn't attack the School of the Blind. I mean, granted, the school looked to be pretty out of the way and pretty grown up. We didn't get to see the other side of the school, and I would assume that there was some sort of road or path to the school, since they'd want to make it relatively easy for people to get there, particularly if those people are blind. So from the back way, it just looked like from the side of the river, there was no real path up there. But I imagine that through the other side or some side, there would be. So why didn't the insane people ever show up there? At least indoors, people who could still see would have the option to take off their blindfold and fight back, but the School of the Blind really wouldn't have that option because they can't see ever. Now, I understand that there were people who could see there, but it still leaves the question: why did the insane people never attack? I suppose they could have not known about it, but then again, how did they know about these other houses where people were hiding out with their blindfolds on? Now, as I said before, the reason that these specifics were probably left out of the story and these questions were left unanswered was to keep the focal point on the metaphor. As soon as you start answering these questions that help people immerse themselves in the story more, they kind of lose sight of the fact that this is a metaphor for something, that the story is alluding to something, or rather the movie, and the story is just something, a reason within the world for the movie to take place. And that's the problem for me. I like to immerse myself in the world and in the story, and if you're intentionally leaving the specifics out and these questions unanswered to keep me from immersing myself in the story so that I keep a focal point on the metaphor about it, I can't really get into it. I mean, I finished the movie, and it was a decent movie, but it wasn't fantastic by any means. And I think it'd be a lot better if I could immerse myself within the story while it still alludes to some sort of metaphor. And while not a great movie, The Babadook does this much better. Again, Babadook wasn't a great movie, but it did give you specifics and answers within the story while keeping itself alluding to the metaphor. And I think there actually has been an official meaning behind the Babadook released, but it makes a lot of sense. And I think, if I remember correctly, the Babadook was a metaphor for depression. And so, if you want to watch the movie, spoiler alert, I'll give you a moment. Alright, so at the end of the Babadook, you see that this creature or whatever, she's locked it in the basement, and the girl's taking it bowls of worms. And so this wrapped up the story, albeit not amazingly. It wasn't a complete answer, but it did give us an ending. We understood that, okay, from this point out, this is how they're going to live. She's going to keep it in the basement, she's going to keep feeding worms to keep it happy so it's not rampaging through her house, messing everything up again. But to the metaphor, that makes a lot of sense too, that once you've dealt with your depression, you've locked it away, but it's still inside you, it's still there, it's not gone, and it's still kind of feeding on the deeper, darker nastiness within inside you. So it fits the metaphor, and it kind of wraps up the story as, okay, this is how she lives the rest of her life. What you get with the Bird Box is, okay, they made it to this School of the Blind, which is, again, not that much safer than the house they're staying at to begin with, So now what do? Sure, they killed several insane people, but they killed like a carload or two. I'm sure there are quite a few more out there. So what happens to them? You know, what if they do attack? Do they ever find out what this thing is that is driving people to suicide? Do they ever figure out how to defeat it, or do they just live on without it? We don't know. There's not any sort of wrapping up to the story, no sort of actual conclusion. It's just, okay, they moved houses. But other than that, the world, the story, nothing has changed. Within the Babadook, you get that wrap up. Again, maybe it's not the most satisfying answer, but it was an answer of, okay, well, they've wrapped this up because now, instead of just rampaging through the house and everything, it's locked in a basement being fed, and that's where she's just kind of keeping it so she can go into life mostly normal, because she's learned to deal with this demon, or if you're looking at a metaphor, deal with this depression. You don't get that in the Bird Box. So overall, I'd say if somebody out there who's a movie producer or whatever is making a movie based on a metaphor, absolutely make it to the metaphor. They can be interesting because it's fun to analyze a movie and look at the deeper points within the story, certainly. However, the story and the world itself needs to be immersive and engaging. You need to give us the specifics, you need to answer questions, you can't just leave things open-ended, and then when people question it, be like, it's based on a metaphor, it doesn't have to make sense, because that's not true. For a good movie, you need to have your specifics, and you need to have these very glaring questions answered, such as, what is this thing driving people to suicide? And I feel like the obvious answer for if we were to ask the people of who made the movie Bird Box or wrote the book, they'd probably say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what those things are. The idea is what it alludes to. And again, I understand that, but I personally don't like that. I like to know, okay, cool, there's a side meaning to it. There's this little bit of extra, and again, it's fun to sit there and analyze it and pick out the pieces of the story and figure out what it's alluding to. But the story should be able to stand alone by itself too. Anyway, I think I've rambled on about this enough. Again, I apologize for the nasally sound. I'm still sick, but it's been almost 2 weeks since I've gotten a video out. But anyway, thanks for watching.